How's it going, Coffee Nation? We are doing a tier list today where we're going to be ranking the items in Fire Emblem Engage. So some of these items are consumable, some of these are stat-based, SP-based, and so on. So how we're going to be rating them is how good they are in the base game for Maddening, and I might consider the DLC, like if it's a DLC item, I'll still rate it as if it were for base game. Maddening on DLC is a different landscape to some degree, but these items are still pretty powerful. So these are the class-changing items. So to begin, we have everyone's favorite item, the anti-poison. The anti-toxin. So essentially this thing is a Vulnerity that also cures poison. Poison is situationally a threat on certain maps, maybe. Honestly, it's rarely a threat in general. So I would say this is just like services. All right, so here are the ratings. We have S for tops. These are the tops. We have A for great, with an 8 in it for no reason. We have B for goods, C for services. This is kind of like your B and C tier, and then D for no. Maybe no service. All right. I wanted to put an S there, but it's not letting me. All right, no service. All right, so no service. So this is like services. This is a C tier. You use it situationally, and outside of situationally, it's basically just a worse Vulnerity if it's not curing poison, because it's more expensive. All right, next we have, let's do the Vulnerity. Let's like rearrange these, because it's kind of random. The order is currently a little random for my take, for my tastes. Let's rearrange these by what they are really quick. All right, there we go. That should be good. Okay. How good is a Vulnerity? I'd say Vulnerity's B tier. It's cheap. It's a good self-heal. It does what you want it to. You can spam them early game. It's fine. It's definitely not going to break the game. It's situationally useful, which is kind of the definition of B or C tier. So depending on which you prefer, this has more availability. They're cheaper, so it's whatever. It's just a decent healing item. It's fine. All right, Torch. Torch, I would say, is the definition of services, or C tier. It's so situational, it can only be used on certain maps, and outside of that, it's, useless, so it doesn't really do much outside of help you on like 2 or 3 maps at most. Maybe even D tier, but you don't even need to use it, to be honest. Like, if you just know the enemy spawns, the darkness maps are totally fine. So I'd say there's better tools, too, like Micaiah kind of undermines the need for torches. Elixir, I would say, is A tier. Elixir heals for 30, but if you also run Saline, she is the solution you need, and that bumps it up to 45 health, which is like a full health self-heal, and that can be situationally useful, but it's also pretty strong, and for late game, it's really good just to fix someone's health. But I would say, it's pretty good, it's pretty solid. The Pure Water, I would say, is like C tier. This is only really useful on certain units. This can be used on any tank. Actually, I'll put it in B. It can be used on any tank. So if you have a tank that has average res, even if it's like a speedy tank like Goldberry or Chimera, you can run this to reduce their magic damage taken, so that when they're tanking an enemy phase, they're not getting hit for as much. It is pretty decent. I personally don't use a lot of it, but I can see it being useful. All right, the next is Tonics in general. I would say Tonics are A tier. Tonics can boost your stats, and they can also be used pre-game, like before a chapter. And certain like speedrunners, LTCers, people that want to squeeze as much as they possibly can out of the game, tend to use these. But even if you just want to use these in general, they can be used for like speed fixing, increasing damage, increasing durability. You also have to note the HP tonic increases health by 5, whereas all the other tonics scale stats by 2. So getting plus 5 health, plus 5 strength, plus 2 speed, plus 2 strength, plus 2 speed is pretty huge value. They're relatively cheap. They're 150 gold each. And if you run the DLC, they're 33% off, so it's not bad. Next, we have the lunch items, the meals, if you will. I want to put meals like here. Just for, I think they're a little bit better than antitoxin because it heals for more. But it is single use, which is a problem. Actually, I think it's fair to put them here. There's one use case where they're good, and that's when using favorite food, I think is what it's called. Celica's passive, where when you eat a lunch, which you only can get one of at a time, you get your engage meter filled. So outside of that, it's basically just a one-use, stronger Vulnerary, which kind of sucks. And compared to an Elixir, it heals for less health, so it's not nearly as good. One thing I'm noticing, I have the item list over here. It says, like, each description, so like Salene's meal says leftovers elegantly packed by Salene. Etier's leftovers tightly packed by Etier. Like, they're all they're all like themed in relation to the character, which I don't know why, but whatever. But yeah, it's a C tier. All right, let's move the stat boosters down. We'll do those last. So let's get these stat boosters. Let's do the DLC stuff after these. Let's get these stat boosters down in here. And then I'll do these over here. Okay. So, Master Seal, Second Seal. These are easy S tier. For items, these enable you to advance your units and change their classes. These are S tier for sure. All right, these items. So Mage Cannoneer seems like it's really good based on what I've been exposed to when using it. Enchanter also seems like it's really good. So these are pretty crazy. Like all the class change stuff, I'd say easy S tier. All right, now we have the stat boosters. So Energy Drop, I would say, is one of the best stat boosters in the game. There's a lot of, I would say the best builds right now are physical, aside from like Levin Sword builds. But even then, I usually prefer physical builds because there's really no downside. So like the only downside really is enemies with high defense. And usually that's mitigated by using Armor Slayer or by running Lunar Brace. But giving yourself +2 strength is massive in this game. Similarly, I would put Spirit Dust up here as well for the same reason. It scales your magical damage. So if you want to run like a Sword Power 11 build, for example, you could do that, or just on tomes, it's fine. Easily S tier. As for Draco Shield, I would say this is actually A tier. I mean, increasing defense is useful, but it's definitely not as good as damage. And there's other tools and mechanics you can use to scale durability or to mitigate damage. And raw defense stat, while it is useful when using it on tanks, +2 defense is not nearly as good as +2 strength. Because if you're doubling or quadding, that's +4 to 8 damage. So versus the defense thing, if you're using units correctly, you shouldn't be getting doubled or quadded yourself, but it could situationally reduce damage. But I find that reducing damage is usually not as good as doing things like chain guarding or bonded shield or delaying with fire or freezing enemies. So I wouldn't say it's nearly as good. Goddess Icon, I think it's actually kind of bad. Luck doesn't really do that much in this game. As far as I know, it increases like a few different things slightly. It increases crit avoid, it increases avoid slightly. It does something else, but it doesn't increase crit rate in this game. So the only real use case of this, in my opinion, is like building Anna's luck for her passive to trigger. And outside of that, maybe increasing crit avoid on certain units, but that's really about it. Boots are definitely, those are definitely the best item. +1 movement, you can't go wrong with that. That's pretty crazy. So the other thing that's funny about boots is it kind of implies your characters don't have boots, and then it's like now they have boots, now they can move more. But +1 movement, definitely better than damage. You know, it allows you to be more flexible with your positioning. You can dive more effectively. You can get in and out more effectively. Like you can escape and kite enemies. So pretty huge value. Dex +2 book, so the skill book. I would say this is A tier. This is good on a few units who have Dex triggers. It's also good for slightly increasing accuracy and crit rate. So it increases accuracy more so than crit rate, but it's still decent. It's still a useful item that units that have hit rate problems or units who want to go for crit builds want, or units who have Dex builds like a Luna build, a Sandstorm build, or an Ignis build, or I think even Void Grasp, like Ivy, has a Dex trigger as well. So there's a lot of Dex trigger units that want this. So it's actually pretty good. Maybe it's a little bit better than defense. HP +5, I would say, is like mid S tier. It's free durability. You know, more health is good. You don't die as fast. It's pretty nice. You like it. You love to get these. They're really nice. Outside of that, it's not gonna like it won't typically make you like unkillable, or it might barely push you over the threshold to getting killed or not. So that can be useful. And if you stack it on units with high health or just use it on things that need health, It's pretty good. It's always good. Increasing HP is always good in these games. Speedwing, I would say, is high S tier. Right, like right underneath boots. Speed fixing is one of the most useful things to do in the game. Doubling is good. It scales your avoid rate. It does a lot, and especially when used on units who barely don't double, or if you just want to push them up into speed ranges so they don't get doubled on enemy phase or something, that can be very helpful. But it's very good. Speed is very strong. Talisman, I think, is like B tier. It's definitely not as good as the other ones. I feel like there aren't that many mages on the enemy team, especially ones that double. There's certainly enemies that target res, but a lot of them tend to be weak. Like, there's a lot of weird enemy units that have, like, Levin Sword, even though they don't have a build for it, and they just have bad magic stats, so their damage is low. And there's also enemies with, like, Flame Lance, which, same thing. They have, like, weird stats, and they don't have good damage on it. So they're kind of like a meme. But defense is definitely better than res overall. There's more things that hit defense than res, I would say. And the things that do hit defense tend to hit harder, or tend to be a bigger threat. Like, there aren't really, like, speedy mages in the game that are going to double you, where there are a ton of, like, enemy wolf knights and sword masters that could potentially double you, and they all use physical. And when they do use magic, it's terrible, so it's kind of a meme. But it's still useful. It's still good to patch holes on your tanks, to some degree, if you want to increase their res so that when they get hit by magic, it's not as bad. On speedy tanks, it's good because it helps, boost mitigation on, res. So that's pretty much all it does. It's a very defensive thing. All right, so now we have these SP books. Let's organize them. All right, the 100 SP book. I would say this is even A tier, to be honest. So plus 100 SP. It's pretty solid. Novice book. It's pretty easy to get them. You just use the well. And also certain DLC things grant you these. Next we have the Adept book. This one is definitely, I would say it's better than movement, because if you get enough of these things, you can just, like, completely create some monster build. Like, you can get crazy abilities just by leveraging this. And then, of course, the expert one is high S tier. I don't think this is S tier because 100 really isn't that much, but when you get these are game-changing amounts of SP. This can be enough to push you over. So, like, you use one of these to get your bulk SP up, and then you use this for, like, fixing. So, like, let's say you're, like, 300 away from some, SP threshold to unlocking some crazy skill. This is just used to, like, filling in the gaps. Like, you wouldn't want to use a 500 to finish someone's build and then have it access to 200 SP. You'd rather use 3 of these. And you get these more commonly than these. So, SP economy. Okay, and then we have the Pact Ring. So the Pact Ring gives you your A, from your A support to your S support. So it boosts your support level with one specific unit. And I do believe you get scaled rewards in terms of, or scaled stat boosts between the two units. And you also gain access to, I think, stronger abilities in regards to bond level when using Elixir as a ring. So for that reason, I would say it's, like, probably at least, like, S tier, right? Just for the stat increases. Maybe, like, here. Just for the stat increases. And even just from, like, enabling Elixir as an emblem, like, it's still pretty decent. You do have to do an entire mission to get it, though, so that might factor in. Maybe we'll put it at low S tier because of the availability. You have to do an entire mission just to get it, whereas these, you often just get them from playing the game. So these, you also need to do an entire DLC thing to get, and they're very expensive outside of that. You get one set of them for free. I would say these are on average better. These two, because you can just buy these. Like, you can't just go get these easily. These are low availability S tier things, in my opinion. There's also specific builds that can be enabled from S rank Elixir, just from, like, the crazy stat enhancements. I personally don't really care about S rank ring because it's just, like, it just beat the game. I don't need it. Whatever, I'll just beat the game instead of doing some extra mission. I think by the time I get to end game, I'm just, like, done with the game. Like, I've already done, like, half the paralogs or so, and I just want to beat it. But, if you want to do this, this is pretty huge. These are pretty good as well. This might be better than that. But here's my item tier list. Most of the stat boosters are definitely an S tier, and some of them I don't really care. Like, when I get a goddess icon, it's like, oh boy, it does almost nothing. And then talisman, it's kind of a similar vibe where It's certainly not as good as these. And it's definitely not as good as these. But when I get these, I'm a little hyped. Like, basically, it's all about hype. So, like, when I get Boots, Speedwing, Energy Drop, Spirit Dust, or Angelic Robe. Is that what it's called in this game? Sometimes it changes. Seraph Robe. Yeah, Seraph Robe. Is there Angelic Robe? Hold on, let me look this up. FE. Am I remembering this correctly? Oh, that's not even the right thing. I think it... Hold on. Okay, Angelic is +7, right? Okay. I think I am remembering this correctly. It just, there's a +7 one. Yeah, 7. Okay, Angelic Robe is +7. Okay, so I'm not crazy. I'm like, pretty sure Angelic Robe is the thing. All right, yeah, so Seraph Robe, Spirit Dust, Energy Drop, Speedwing, Boots. These are all things that get me excited. These are things that I'm like, these are pretty good. And this is like, and this is like, meh. Meh. This is like, This is hype. This is low-key hype. These are hype. Here we go. These are ranks. No service. Here. Why? So this is hype. This is low-key hype. Meh. Why? All right, there's your tiers. Definitely let me know if you agree or disagree with any of these and why. And be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.